the one today will at least get uploaded. That's at least the plan. So it should be recorded, and we have this, and well, I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out if this works. So to be 100% clear, I'm using OBS to do these recordings, and I really first started realistically using OBS like at the exact start of the open beta, which was in fact 6 days ago. So I'm still kind of learning through experiencing the technical difficulties one by one, and I hope that is all right with you guys. So you guys can still hear me. Let me get a check real quick. If I could get in general chat any sort of thumbs up emoji or things like that. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so who here has a question? Yeah, to start off with, let me take a peek at you guys. Question for IWV. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Oh, hey, welcome, Oak and Shadow. Okay, at which point after epoch flip does it get filled up with incants from swap fees? Great question. Okay, so believe it or not, the amount of Pyre Phantom that is actually pending, as it were, at the meet address, it doesn't get sent, but it actually gets burnt and then reminted. Yeah, so the IWV actually remints whatever this amount of Pyre Phantom is, literally down to the last decimal, as the reward. And that was just a way to make it work. Before it, believe it or not, it was not able to kind of do that. That is also why we have a receipt token. And by the way, I really like seeing that the total transfers just keeps going up. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but for a holder count of 23, you're noticing that it's almost approaching 100 transfers per holder. So we're also going to have, like, I think a really, really high ratio of transfers to holders, which is also, well, often that can actually be viewed at like it's a bunch of bots kind of like making the chart do that, but will be a solid contrast point. But yes, I will answer your question, Pega. So we're looking at let me pull up this link right here. If you guys can see Pega's link, I'll open it real quick. Token holdings, and this is the IWV address. Okay. At which point after ECOP flip does it get filled up with incants from swap fees? Okay, great question. So this is basically how it works. So let's say we have epoch 1, epoch 2, and epoch 3. Okay, and I will do epoch 4 too. Epoch 3, and epoch 4. And we'll just say that this is for a given 24-hour period, but it could have been, this could be today, this could be yesterday, this could be a month from now. Does that make sense? So does it get filled up with incants, meaning people usurp, IWV gets empty, it gets loaded again with incants, which shows the EPR on dashboard. People claim again at next epoch. No. So believe it or not, the EPR shown in the dashboard is not an indication of the sorry, my Discord chat seems to be lagging a little bit, but yeah, the EPR shown in the dashboard is not an indication. Let me see if I can just pull this up. This is not like right here, this 19% EPR or this 28,000% APR. This is not an indication of the incants that are reserved, by the way. And by the way, did you guys notice we changed it to incants reserved here because I feel like it's a bit more clear about how the reward works. So this EPR is in fact indicative of the incants that are actually in the MEAD contract address. So the way this works is we have two contracts, right? We have the two components. One of them is the incantation witch vault, and the other one is the MEAD address. So in this configuration, even though the MEAD address has nothing to do with incantation, like meeting has nothing to do with incantation, what we end up doing is we end up using the MEAD address as a container. We end up using it as the inventory of the pending incantation for next epoch. So all of the incants right now are literally waiting, not at the IWV, but at the MEAD address. So they're literally waiting to effectively get delivered. But the thing is, they don't get sent, they get burned and then reminted, which is, again, I know a bit weird, but in fact, it'll always do this exact number. So that's why when you guys send money, if you guys bait the meat address, as it were, that is why that amount of Pyre Phantom does actually end up in the incants. So the EPR shown dashboard is not an indication ever of incants that have already been distributed. And I promise this thing's gonna work, right? Wow, I have no idea why this thing would be. Ever of what's the meat contract? Guys, great question. I'll pull it up right here. In fact, I'll give you the fucking link. Yep. So okay, I'm gonna explain that as well. All right. So meaning that you're looking for the sequence, right? It gets loaded again, which was the EPR. People claim again on next epoch. How many minutes after epoch change does this happen? I tried to look on a transaction, but couldn't figure it out. Yes. After epoch change, I look at EPR to figure out the something left. No. That the EPR is never going to give you an indication of how much there is left to usurp. That is also another risk of usurping. It's because you don't actually know. You don't have indication as much as you would for playing. Does that make sense? So usurping is again meant to be. We're not gonna. You won't expect usurping to receive the same support that like playing the more noble way would. Does that make sense? So usurping is just part of the game, as it were. But we would never like because it's considered a bit more. Yeah, exactly. Usurping is again, it's part of pestering, right? So do you remember? Did you read the How to Assess Risk document? If that makes sense. So pestering and flogging, they're definitely flogging and usurping specifically as far as pestering goes. And of course, you can pester other ways, whichever way you want. But those methods are not like how do I explain it? I'm trying to think of like a better game where like there's a parallel to it, but it's considered like both like dirty moves, as it were. I don't know how else to describe it, but they are legal and valid. But the dashboard itself will not really ever cater to people who participate in those. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm wishing I could think of like there you go. Yeah, Charlotte, that's actually a pretty good answer. Like it's like you're doing something that's kind of yeah. But anyway, let me answer your first question. Okay, how many minutes? And then you look under that, and then after epoch, I look at EPR. Okay, yep. Okay, trading fees from which period exactly? Okay, so there's a 6-hour delay. So let me explain that here with going back to epoch 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's go back to this one. Yeah, thank you, Charlotte, for at least having an example there, because I admittedly failed to come up with an example. But I'll let you guys continue to look at this juicy APR counter while I'm doing this. So epoch 1, if we said this was the first 6 hours of the day, as it were, let's say epoch 1 is filled with arbitrage bot transaction volume. Does that make sense? They're just trading Axelar Bitcoin against other Axelar Bitcoin on another DEX. Does that make sense? They're like, oh, hey, Bitcoin is going to 51K or whatever the fuck the price is now, right? I haven't even looked. But like, hey, Bitcoin's moving up, therefore we can arbitrage it. And yeah, 52K right now, right? So they're going to just arbitrage it back and forth, and they get fees. They get margin, and the LPers get fees, right? So arguably this is a mutually beneficial transaction, and believe it or not, the bots take more of the risk. So additionally, bots pay twice as much fees, which I don't think people realize. And let's say that happens. Well, what's going to happen is those fees are collected, and when epoch 1 transpires, or should I say when epoch 1 transitions into epoch 2, that TE, which by the way, TE means transpire, yeah. TE means transpire epoch as like a button, as the button being clicked. That TE takes all those fees collected in epoch 1, and I guess you could say it siphons off a bit of that LP, because again, swap fees accrue as LP themselves, as LP itself. That TE takes all those fees collected in epoch 1 and siphons off a bit of that LP. Swap fees accrue as LP itself and sends it to a contract. Contract known as Summoning Circle. Now, Summoning Circle is actually a modified version of the Boo system from Spooky Swap, but it is a bit more I guess what would the word say? It is a bit more customized. Yeah, we'll call it that, customized. Okay, so what Summoning Circle does. What Summoning Circle does is the fees that are in the LP that is inside Summoning Circle, whenever a TE is called, it takes 75% of that LP and withdraws all of it and swaps all of it to Phantom. Does that make sense? So whichever chain you're on, it takes 75% of the LP that it's kind of holding and withdraws 75% of it, and it swaps all of it to Phantom. Then it swaps all of that Phantom to Pyre Phantom. Then it sends that Pyre Phantom to the Mead address. Then that Pyre Phantom is pending, and it sits there until the next incantation, when it is then distributed. So basically speaking, all of the fees collected in Epoch 1, let's say we were starting off with a fresh DEX and Epoch 1 was the first one that collected fees, only 75% of the fees are going to get parked to wait for the end of Epoch 2. Now the trick there is that the 25% that's left over at the end of Epoch 2, it takes 75% of that. Does that make sense? So it's always distributing fees that it's collecting, but it's never reaching zero. Does that make sense? Because if the LP in the Summoning Circle ever reaches zero, the Transpire Epoch doesn't fire, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a weird technical issue. But anyway, we like it this way a little bit more because it spreads fees out while also compounding them, if that makes sense. So I hope that sequence answers your question, Pega. But yeah, and when I say distributed, to be clear, it in fact gets burned and then minted. Yeah, it is not a send, as it were. Yep. So, and then by the way, Pega, that is how it compounds too. Does that make sense? Because now, if you understand, now at the end of Epoch 2, now there's actual yield. Does that make sense? So at the end of Epoch 1, there was no incant at all. Does that make sense? There's no incantation at the end of Epoch 1. It's a 0% APR. Does that make sense? 0% EPR, 0% APR. Zero, nothing there. But at the end of Epoch 2, now there is a yield. So because there's a yield, this is in fact incentivizing transaction volume again in order to capture that yield, right? To scalp the yield, as it were. And whether or not you're meeting to do that, or whether or not you're usurping to do that, or whether you're buying, there is just transaction volume that is in fact compounding based on previous transaction volume. And that transaction volume also feeds incantations down the line. Does that make sense? Because those swaps end up going into the Summoning Circle, and then they end up getting just distributed and fed into the system through the incantations. So that is also why you saw the other day we had 7,500 or 7,900. Let's look at good old deck screener. Can you guys see my screen, by the way? Is that working? Yeah, okay, just making sure that we're all good here. Fantastic. So yeah, so so now we have 5,900. So it looks like, wait a minute, why is 24-hour volume going down? It's like, yep. Yes, correct. Yep. Yep, that is basically it. And by the way, that's not 75. The 75% is not. It's not at the meet address. That's in the summoning circle, which is a higher upstream from there. Does that make sense? So then, whenever that contract gets larger or smaller, it's always sending something. Does that make sense? And this is meant so that it never goes to zero. Does that make sense to you guys? So we're always sending 75%. So the next epoch, does that make sense? The 25% left over, like let's put it this way. If I pull up the calculator right here, let's say we had 100, right? If we had 100 and we send 75.75, right? We end up with 75. Well, that would leave you with 25, right? 25 left over. Well, then we take, then we multiply that by 0.25, as it were, because we're going to end up sending, fuck man, I guess this would be minus 25 here. Yeah, we would end up sending 18% into the next one. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you get what I'm saying? And then this 6% left over, we would end up taking 75% of that. So that would be like what, 4 or whatever, 4.5. I don't fucking know. But does that make sense? So you're always shaving off of that. But the fact of the matter is it's getting replenished through the transaction volume on the DEX. So one of the reasons that we have all of the liquidity. Yep, exactly. And it doesn't always grow. Sometimes it does shrink, right? But the fact of the matter is it's never going to zero, and most of the time it's compounding. Does that make sense? So like even if, like for instance, let's say Bitcoin crosses 120K and then it fucking just crashes because that's what happens in winter. That doesn't mean that we're gonna have our volume necessarily. First of all, during the crash, by the way, that will be great for volume. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that like maybe a week or two after the crash, we won't have like a downtrend in volume as well. But the fact of the matter is whatever point we stop at, it's just going to start compounding again from there. Does that make sense? It is. Do you guys know the little engine that could? I don't even know how to describe. I always need to find an allegory. The little engine that could. Do you guys know this story? It's just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. So it's this thing. Yeah, in America, or at least in English-speaking countries, this is like a children's tale. Let me see if I can find this shit. The little engine that could, and it's about a train. It's about a anthropomorphic train. Yeah, the little engine that could. Right. Wow, it was edited 3 weeks ago. It's an American folktale that became widely known in the United States after publication in 1930. And it's based to teach children the value of optimism and hard work. And basically, the point is that it's just, this is the story saying, I think I can. So the fact of the matter is the incantation just literally is just constantly plugging away at just making the next one. And every time it does so, it's incentivizing more transaction volume. So like, whether we get our legs kicked out from under us. Let's put it this way. What if PyreSwap gets exploited? How about that? What if PyreSwap gets fucking exploited? I'll tell you that. Even then, as soon as we fucking isolate the exploit and fix it, the incantation will just start building itself back up again. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm saying? And I know that that's not like a great thought to think about, being a quote-unquote investor, but yeah, that's what I mean about like red candles being good, because like even if Pyre Phantom, somebody figured out how to mint like 1 million of them and just crash the fucking price, it's like, well, we will take that as volume and then we will end up compounding that again. So like, yeah. And this is also why, if you look at the price charts right now, let's take a look. We have 5,900, but we had almost 8,000 the other day. But at the same time, 5,900 is way higher than the low we had before, which was 1,500. Does that make sense? So just like a price chart, the lows keep getting higher. Does that make sense to you guys? The lows keep getting higher. Anyway, so let's look at actual Pyre Phantom, because Bitcoin works that way too. Do you know what I mean? If you were to look at, let's see if we can duplicate this, and let's look at just straight up fucking Bitcoin, right? Do we have Bitcoin on Ethereum maybe? Let's see if we have wrapped Bitcoin. Yeah, so let's look at wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, I guess. Or do we not have that on fucking Uniswap? Are you joking me? Mind-blowing. Okay, anyway, let's see how much age we have here. Liquidity, let's look at this this is on Crow. Wow. I'm looking for an older chain here. Chronos, what chain is this? Scroll. What on earth? Do they not have that shit on fucking Uniswap? Goodness gracious. Let's go look at fucking Ethereum. Uniswap, let's look at the fucking price. Does Uniswap not have wrapped Bitcoin on it? Holy shit, like what is going on? There's no coin that's above 40. What Uniswap is really fucking shitting the bed these days. Let's look at this. Okay, yeah, so PancakeSwap has wrapped Bitcoin. Bless them. I swear to God, like the people at Uniswap do not know what their job is. Like they do not know what they don't know what being a liquidity manager is. Like it blows my mind. Yeah, I know. Like why would you not have this pair? Or maybe Dex, it's mind blowing. Anyway, so this right here, this is arguably it didn't have it until 22 is not a good price chart for this. Hang on, let's go to CoinGecko or something. Yeah, but you know what? CL, Doc, they should still have it in CL. That's the thing. Like, I just think that they just keep optimizing and doubling down on fucking nonsense. Anyway, so this is Max. So as you can see, this is fucking Bitcoin in 2017, and it was touching prices like 17K as it were. Does that make sense? And then the low went higher here because the lows here were 3,000, right? But that was way higher than it was in 2016, which was again 500, 400. Does that make sense? So then we stuck at 3,000, and then it went up to 11,000, and then it went back down to 8,000, 6,000, and then it went up all the way to fucking 36,000, right? And then it went down right here to 32,000. Then it went all the way up to 57,000. Then it went all the way down here to 40,000. Damn, I didn't mean to do that. But yeah, does that make sense? So your lows keep getting higher. So even though like you're looking at this now 32,000, you're like, oh shit, this is 60,000 now, and then it went down to 20,000, then it went down to fucking 17,000. Does that make sense? These lows are higher than the lows were down here. So that is in fact, it works the exact same way. Like this is a crypto project, so it has this exact same treatment, and I know you can't see that because a lot of this chart isn't here, but these patterns here are almost like fucking clockwork now because it actually is built around the halving cycle. It's built on game theory of the halving cycle, and that's why you see it creeping up now. Somebody was DMing me the other day. They might be in the audience, and basically they were saying we might actually break all-time high before the halving because of speculative front-running of the halving. Then what will happen is it'll pull back after the halving and then wait for the actual fucking choking to happen, and then it'll go up. So who knows what will fucking happen. But that is basically how it works. It just gets higher lows. So will it get higher highs? Sure, but most importantly, we climb from higher lows because the lows are really the part that you can bet on. Does that make sense? Crypto winter is real crypto. Do you know what I mean? Crypto summer, that's not real crypto. That's the way I look at it. So it's, you know what I mean? The fact that, by the way, look at this right now. We have 6,000 24-hour volume. Do you guys see this number? Can everybody still hear me? Yep, okay, fantastic. So look at these dexes. So we're already almost 90%. We're above 80% the volume of redemption. And redemption, they're made up of the same coins as us. Yeah, I know, exactly. Well, that's what I mean. The lows are getting higher. Does that make sense? Clantonso? So like I do recognize that we had days above 8,000, but our low is 6,000. Does that make sense? So like that's what I mean. We have that cycling action. But look at this. So we're already higher in 24-hour volume than SushiSwap on Phantom. So we are already better than SushiSwap. By the way, we're not even being tracked by DexScreener, right? SolSwap, which has the most Bitcoin on the chain, we are also higher than them in 24-hour volume. Guys, I want you to pay attention. There's like maybe 40 total people playing the IWV, and we're already bigger than chains that have significantly more TVL than us. Look at this. This chain has, like, SolSwap has at least 10 times as much, right? You know what, Electronic? I do want to make all of them cross-chain. I do want that to happen, and that will be like a phase 2 thing. I'll tell you this, Electronic, because of multi-chain being because of multi-chain fucking crashing, that kind of put a hamper, or should I say put a speed bump into that plan, because a lot of these coins were already bridgeable on multi-chain. So I'll tell you this, we unfortunately will have to do liquidity first, same chain, and then phase 2 is when we get the cross-chain stuff happening. So phase two, by the way, is all about cross-chain. So oh, and by the way, electronic Dibs and D-Share will do just fine with the IWV. Does that make sense? Dibs hasn't even gotten its IWV yet, right? This is 6 days into Phantoms. I know. Electronic, I'll tell you this soon, but we're going to take care of a problem here on Phantom first, and then we will go and make sure that we're cross-chain. So I promise you, I wish we could have been where we are now back in like June or July of last year, but the thing is, I only see more proof that this is working exactly like it's designed. So it has to be worth it, right? And the thing is, by the way, in the time that in the time that's elapsed, it's only become, oh, and by the way, we changed the icon here, so now this little orange flame, that is the actual icon for PyreSwap, as well as the icon for the Pyre token itself. So that is now adjusted, because it used to be the Sandwich Circus logo here. But yeah, soon. And the thing is, I would say before... Here's the thing. Whenever I speak on behalf of like the devs being able to do something, I always end up like fucking it up. So forgive me if I just can't answer those questions. But yeah, like as you can see... Let me take a breath here. First of all, let's talk about parasailing that we're seeing right now in this chart, right? Do you guys have any questions, by the way? And by the way, if we dial it back down to the 10th, this is the day. This is the day of the actual open beta. And as you guys can see, it climbed up to here, and it looked like it was uptrending, but looks like it's trending a bit more sideways now. Do you guys understand why? Oh yeah, and Phantom, by the way, definitely has the most. Yeah, Alessio, this is also one being recorded. So I'm just going to kind of, well, this one is supposed to be recorded for the purpose of publishing. So anyway. So one thing I fucking hate, I don't know about you guys, but I'll be on other parts of social media and I'll be seeing these fucking analyses from TA, and it'll be people just like rattling off their opinion. And like, it's really just like a bunch of nonsense, but they say it with like such belief that they end up selling it. Does that make sense? It's like a bunch of nonsense that makes no fucking sense. And but they have like that real emphasis, and they believe in themselves like very, very hard. And they make like a lot of bold, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, the difference, the real PyreSwap difference, yes, Pega, yes. Now the thing is, you might be wondering, why did it kind of taper to the right? Why is it tapering to the right? And do you guys know why? Like, do you guys understand why? Because we went over this. Why would it kind of, first of all, downtrend here before kind of correcting to sideways? Like, we had a small moment of downtrend here on the 14th. Does that make sense? And then why is it starting to correct sideways again? Why do you guys see that it's kind of broken to a less steep downtrend, and now is it maybe an uptrend? EPR, well, that's one of them, but also additionally, Clantonzo, it is the consolidation. Yeah, well, the 2-ohm getting sold. The 2-ohm getting sold certainly does help the EPR and the yield, but the point being is, the boat has to get more speed, and what's happening is there is in fact consolidation happening. So what I mean by that is, whenever you see a downtrend, that normally means that meeting happened. So for those of you who remember, I want to say 3-ohm actually got meted to maximum. Does that make sense? Do you guys remember 3-ohm got meted to the max? And then like, oh, wait a minute. And now, guess what? Now, people are holding Z-ohm, but guess what? They're not going to meet for it, right? Because that is literally like that's a loss. Oh, look, they can't even meet 3-ohm for a fucking profit. And oh, they can't even meet 2-ohm for a profit. But that's exactly how this works. Does that make sense? Because as people play this game, what happens? As time just goes by, there's two contraction vectors for Pyre Phantom, right? First of all, it has the decay. That is a ubiquitous contraction in supply that, again, does not hurt anybody until price changes. Does that make sense? It, in theory, increases the price of everything if you're looking at it in isolation. So price changing one way or another could be why, but the point being is I assumed that people wouldn't be holding it anyway because of the decay. I'm like, oh, people will dump this token. Like, that is what I expected, and that's also like the point because I wanted to generate volume. Does that make sense? Like, the more volume we get, the higher it goes, and that even includes when there's red candles on Pyre Phantom. And I know that this is incredibly difficult to understand, but there's almost always a net buy pressure on Pyre Phantom. Like, there's always just like a little bit more than there is leaving. And the fact that we have a shit ton of pairs that pair with it means that every single transaction creates a bunch of arbitrage opportunities. And by the way, when we get into when we get into more fee structures, when we have a deck with 4 fee structures, all of those fee structures will have Pyre Phantom pairs as well. So we're just gonna have so many fucking pairs. We're really going in a really opposite direction to the rest of like conventional DeFi because everybody else would just concentrate all in one pair, and I'm like, no. Like, that isn't serving your decks. And the thing is, like, if your token has like an actual financial instrument associated with it, like if you want your token to be an investment vehicle, then why would you care? Anyway, I'm not gonna harp on that forever, but it just proves that, again, I'm looking at people with way more TVL in their dexes, and I'm better at their job than they are. Let's put it that way. They don't know what they're fucking doing. They're copying off the kid to the left of them. Oh yeah, Maddie, that's 100% correct. Yeah, like that is also the fact of the matter, because arbitrage bots are fucking servants. They're not our fucking antagonists. Do you know who arbitrage bots antagonists are? Other arbitrage bots. I don't know why this is like some sort of belief that human nature has, but whenever they think that they have more than one enemy, they assume that their enemies are colluding against them. And I'm like, that's not how human nature works at all. This is like an illusion that people think. This is also how people address like economic problems in their country. It's like, it's the corporations. It's like, well, corporations are always competing with other corporations. So, yeah, it's just this sort of like, you put everybody in this basket. Like, oh, the bots are doing it. It's like, well, the reason, yeah, just because bots are making money doesn't mean bots are also losing money. And technically speaking, bots also pay more swap fees than everybody else, because bots are making sure to transact twice. Like, they would never make a single buy. They're like, nope, I need to make a buy and a sell, and I need to act fast. So their time preference is adding a lot of fees. So I don't know why. Again, nobody else looks at this like I do, and I guess they all look at it the wrong way, because I'm only seeing more and more evidence that I got it right. Anyway, so yeah, right now, guess what? There isn't any opportunity to meet profitably. And what is that called? That's called shielded, right? Shielded Pyre Phantom. To writing directly to the contract? No, not really. I don't know. Like, you mean as like a bot would? Like, okay, so based on like a human, like they would just be faster anyway. So let's say that if I duplicated this, and let's say like, yeah. Let's say if I wanted to claim it on stake and then I wanted to fucking swap all at the same time, then it's like, oh, if I have the ability to just access those things directly in the back end, then I don't need to fucking, like click between tabs. Does that make sense? So there is a time advantage there. But the fact of the matter is, Charlotte, like, consider that the incantation is literally a spectrum where before incantation, it's last mover advantage. And then after incantation, first mover advantage. So like, in theory, if you understand here, this is like a gigantic change this causes such a gigantic shift in pacing that because of the fact that not only do you have to do all this, but you also have to transpire the epoch to make that happen, other people will end up waiting on the epoch to be transpired from somebody else. Does that make sense? Like, so there's always advantage in being fast, but again, I didn't design that game to work this way because, yeah, like, I would say this, Charlotte, you should try botting, and then, like, after you lose enough money, you can figure out to do it the manual way. I'll tell you this. The last guy I know who bragged about how good he was at bots, he basically exit scammed the project. And the thing is, if he was so good at bots, why did he need to run an exit scam? Was it because he wasn't making money with bots? Like, I don't know. I know that, yeah. Oh, yeah, well, Charlotte, I would say those are better questions for Kia Dezo and even Shadow, if you know who those people are. Yeah. But yeah, like, I don't run bots because I would be fucking embarrassed to run bots. Like, oh, Five is running bots. It's like, okay, yeah, like, okay, you can't, okay, this would be like your day job. Yeah, I don't know. It's imagine if the president of the United States, right, like, worked weekends as like a fucking like at the flea market or something. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know how else to describe this. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, imagine you're in charge of a bank, but then you pick up shifts at the flea market, or like you work at, like, yeah, well, okay, I'm not even say like the president himself, but I'm saying imagine you're the fucking CEO of a bank, and then, like, you pick up shifts from, like, other I don't even know how to describe it. But you're also like an MLM salesman on the weekend. Does that make sense? Like, I need you guys to understand that, like, not all money is the same. This is what I mean. Not all money is the same. Does that make sense? It's the same way as, like, not all calories are the same. Does that make sense? So, like, just because you could eat 500 calories of steak, or you could eat 500 calories of breakfast cereal. These are not fungible amounts of calories. Like, I know maybe you guys don't think about the instrument. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you guys? Like, you could eat 500 calories of donuts, or you could eat 500 calories of fucking, like, steak. Does that make sense? Like, these are not nearly the same thing, even though they're the exact same number. And I know that, like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, all money is money. And I'm like, no, you're good at something. Like, make money at what you're good at. Like, this is why I'm not a dev. Does that make sense? There's no point in me learning to be a dev. Like, I learned a software model so I could speak to devs. But, like, for me to be a dev, it's like I'm basically, and now I'm entering a competition with all the other devs. Why wouldn't I focus on my blue ocean? Does that make sense to you guys? Like, when I look at Web3, I see that there's so many people that are devs, and they think like devs, and they design things like devs, but people don't design shit like I do. Does that make sense? And the reason I design it like I do is because I'm not a dev. I don't think like a dev. So I would say that, you know, you guys, whatever you guys are good at, figure out how to monetize that. Like, don't be too much of a dabbler if you already kind of identified where you can dominate. Does that make sense to you guys? I do encourage experimentation, but yeah, like, I'm never gonna be an expert on bots because I'm never gonna, like, debase myself. Yeah, well done, Doc. I'm never gonna debase myself by, like, trying to get into bots. Like, oh, maybe I'll try a little bit of this and I'll try a little bit of that. No. Yeah, there you go, Electronic. You're a flogger. So if that works for you, play like that. Because, by the way, even in the Witch Vault, there's going to be certain strategies that work for you really well and certain ones that you might be bad at. Does that make sense? So, like, it works the same way. Like, play the way you're good, right? Shit, even in, like, boxing and stuff, there's different styles. So, like, most boxers stick to a certain style. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So I would say, like, do learn what you guys are actually good at, and then figure out how to monetize that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't run bots, so therefore, like, I couldn't tell you, like, the right way to run bots. But I just know that bots are not in collusion with each other, and bots lose money all the time, and bots are willing to pay all types of friction. Like, bots go through. I had to explain I think to other people that when I was building this, I put a bunch of Bowman. I would say like bots would make me look like a fucking. For me to do bots, it's like I have like some sort of like dirty secret or something. Does that make sense? And also, it looks like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, do you not? Yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah. Or if you play in the NFL, you know, it can be good for you to go do volunteer work or something like that. But you definitely don't need to necessarily, you know, get into MLM on the side. Does that make sense? And start selling Tupperware in your living room? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah, exactly. Go practice football, you dumb fuck. So, like, I don't know anything about bots because I would never not... Like, okay, I right now on my desk, I have a 1,000-page book about liquidity management. So I have read maybe a quarter of it. So I would never spend 5 minutes researching bots that I couldn't spend 5 minutes reading that book. Because that's the book that's going to right, like if I'm gonna stand up here and say that I'm better than fucking Hayden Adams at running a DEX, who is the founder of Uniswap, or I'm better at Jared Gray, who is the CEO of SushiSwap, or I don't even fucking know who the other any of these other motherfuckers. I know I'm better than. Don't even get me started. But if I think I'm better than Spooky, if I think I'm better than Trader Joe, if I think I'm honestly PancakeSwap would probably be the best one, but there's no point in me thinking about how to run a bot. It's better for me to think about how to run a DEX. Does that make sense? So I don't think about bots. I know that bots are my customers. Does that make sense? So like bots bring me fees. So I think of bots as like compulsive, like if you ever heard me think of marmosets and Zugzwang, the perfect example of a marmoset and Zugzwang is an arbitrage bot. Like this bot he has to be hungry. Like he's just so compelled. Like you basically control him. That's the way I think of it. Like for me to fucking run a bot, it's like I only think about how I can control people who are running bots. Does that make sense? Oh, you know what, Electronic? That is a gigantic clusterfuck. And the thing is, you know that 1/3 of that was from COVID. But you know what? I'm not gonna get into the U.S. national debt right now. But you're right. That is mismanaged as fuck. To be honest, if it was the bankers managing that, it wouldn't be that way. But that's not how that debt is managed. So anyway, the time preference of a bot is what I would consider to be like a loser's time preference. Does that make sense? So but yeah, no, I do encourage you guys to just experiment with them. Why not? Like the data is useful because I would like to have more bots on Pirate in general. But I know people get scared or weird when I say that, but no, I think they make for good data because you can see where they're succeeding and where they're failing. But one of the reasons right now we have a 0.7 fee is because it actually makes bots a little bit quieter. But as soon as we reduce the fee, bots will just be swarming this all the time. So literally, when we change the fee structure, it'll be like opening the floodgate to bots. There'll be just like way more bots. The price charts will be moving all the time. The price chart will never go to sleep. Does that make sense? They'll be fucking doing weird shit all the fucking time. More on that later. But yeah, the thing about bots, and I know Doc is familiar with the Stanford marshmallow experiment, is that bots have the highest time preference. Bots are like, I need to make profit in a microsecond. And like the thing is, it probably makes more sense to be a liquidity provider, because a liquidity provider you have a lower time preference. And the thing is, liquidity provider, you get a fee either way. And I know people are still weirded out by impermanent loss, but I think that's just another fucking gigantic. Yeah, like they're just not actually doing the fucking math on this. They're just not thinking the right way. But anyway, I'm not gonna just harp here forever. Who here has other questions? But yeah, not all calories are the same because not all money is the same. So like I'm me as Five, I'm not gonna make my money from botting. Like it's just not my blue ocean. Yeah. I would literally put we're gonna have a platform fee in the swap fee. Like when we change the fee structure, we'll just put it in there. It'll be a small percentage, but like yeah, that platform fee is what allows me to pay the fucking circus people. It allows me to pay myself, right? So I don't know why. Yeah, there's no point in me making a bot because I don't know. Like I need bots to pay my fees. Does that make sense? Yeah. Why would I be making a bot and being an LPer? I don't know. Anyway, but But again, maybe you can make money both ways, like in the short term and the long term. It does make sense. Like banks do that as well, but I don't think. Yeah, but anyway. But the thing is, bots are like an inevitability. So I just assume that it'll show up. Does that make sense? Like a base layer of bots. We definitely aren't spending any time building code to be antagonistic to bots because I need bots to bring me that money, right? Bots actually deepen liquidity. So people don't realize this though. But yeah, the reason we have Bitcoin and Ethereum on these dexes is because arbitrage bots will always be trading with these dexes, even if it's just a small background amount of volume. But anyway, see, do I have any of this coin right now? Do I have any? What do I have? Okay, who here has a question? I didn't mean to like harp on bots for the longest time, and I believe why. Do you guys understand why? I could talk about why it has high yields, but you guys might understand that already, right? Do you guys understand it? Oh, 3 ohm. Look at that. 3 ohm is overpriced right now, isn't it? If I sell this 3 ohm, do you guys think meter charge will happen to me? Let's see. I gotta prove it. How funny is that? No, it's not, but I'm welcome. I'm okay with you believing that. I should have said yes. I should have said good guess. For instance, did you guys know that, the late Charlie Munger, right? Who here knows who Charlie Munger was? Charlie Munger? Do you guys know who this person was? Okay, Bo, besides Bo, yeah. Yeah, the CEO, and Dr. Mack knows who he was. He was the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's company. So Warren Buffett was the chair, Charlie Munger was CEO, and they were basically best friends for like 70 years or whatever. Anyway, so Charlie Munger died in the end of 2023. I want to say it was November or so. And anyway, so like somebody was Charlie Munger is I think just a super smart guy. It is now the ultimate moment. Holy shit, that does really fucking creep up on you. He was a super smart guy, and in another group that I was in, that I was talking on a thread that was about his death, and people who were saying they didn't like Charlie Munger because he didn't praise Bitcoin. Does that make sense? Like, and the thing is, it's like, why would you expect Charlie Munger to praise Bitcoin? That wasn't where he became a billionaire. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Can you imagine? Like, if you lived Charlie Munger's life, there's no reason you would ever spend like more than 30 minutes learning about Bitcoin, because all of the time you spent learning about Bitcoin took away from the time that you could have been focusing on the stuff that you know already makes billions of dollars. Does that make sense? So I think people don't understand the whole blue ocean, red ocean concept. Does that make sense? Like, if you're a real estate billionaire, it doesn't really make sense. Oh yeah, like Grant Cardone, right, owns a little bit of Bitcoin, but he still tells people like Bitcoin speculative, right? Like Bo was about to say, right? So if you have $1 billion real estate portfolio, it doesn't make sense for you to add Bitcoin to it if you have 40 or 30 years doing real estate investment. Does that make sense? Because you're not in your blue ocean. You're now entering a red ocean where you're an amateur. Like, so I do encourage you guys to think about where you're already an expert and then just kind of keep driving from there. Like, stay where you're an expert and then go to the point. You should enter the point where nobody knows. Does that make sense? Like, get your expertise to the point where, like, you have nobody you can look to for the answer. That's what everybody should try to do with their life, I think. And by the way, that is also what created PireSwap. Like, I literally realized, I had to come to this moment where there wasn't anybody in Web3 that even understood this. I could not find anybody in Web3, at least that was a public figure, that understood this remotely as good as I did. So like that is sort of where I come up with saying shit like, fuck, I could have fixed Terra Luna. I could have fucking, I can repeg the multi-chain fucking coins. Does that make sense? Because the fact of the matter is I don't see anybody else who can even approach that fucking equation. So I would say you guys think about where you're good now, and that might just become like self-analysis, or perhaps even journaling your trades, and then fucking honestly, again, I'm not even that good of a fucking trader. Does that make sense? Yeah, like I'm not that good of a trader. Like not like other traders I know. Does that make sense? So I really just pivoted away from fucking taking positions at all. I want to say I definitely didn't even make a crypto transaction for like almost a year. So between maybe like July of 2022, or maybe like, no, I don't know, but it was like a good 6 months. Like I didn't even touch my wallet, but I was working on Pyrosoft every day, or I was moving it along somehow. And I was still in crypto, but I wasn't even transacting. Like, okay, like I have the coins that I have, but I'm not working in crypto to trade. Like I need to fucking build something, if that makes sense. So it makes more sense for me to be a beta creator, okay? A beta creator than an alpha seeker, if that makes sense. Like, why would you want to be an alpha seeker when you can be a beta creator? I don't know if you guys understand. Do you guys understand what I mean by beta creator and alpha seeker? Because yeah. Well, beta means the instrument itself, yeah, and alpha, yeah, exactly, and then alpha means portfolio, yeah, exactly, alpha or position. But yeah, so I like, it's more like okay, so more animals like eat apples. Does that make sense? There's tons of animals that eat apples, but you can just grow apple trees once you figure it out. Does that make sense? If you're the guy who grows apple trees, then all the animals that eat apples, they're now your customers. Does that make sense? Like I don't know. Yeah, that's the way that I look at it. But then again, people in blockchain they keep trying to figure out how to be like a launchpad support platform. Does that make sense? Like this is how the industry kind of just like recursively corrects to speculative nonsense. Like, oh, we're going to be a launchpad platform. It's like, well, you're a launchpad for a launchpad? Anyway, more on that later. Yeah, but like, yeah, so, anyway, do I now have it? Oh, phenomenal. Okay, 5 minutes. Dangerous. Who here has another question? Or we can just wait. We can just look at the chart and see if it's getting dramatic. But do you guys see it? The exact shape every time. Right here, this was the peak. Why? Because the incantation was getting bought here, and then that was the last incantation. And then immediately some sells, right? First minute, second minute, third minute, fifth minute, and then literally 22 minutes after buy, and then 2 hours buy, and then at the same time now, 30 minutes, a little bit of buy. Me, that was just now, 5:49.